Giant News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Discover everything great about California in Malibu, from stunning beaches and restaurants to exquisite wineries, unique shopping, hiking, and horseback riding. There's fun for everyone. PCH is open. Take the 101 to Canaan Road and find your paradise waiting.
Sponsored by Recreation Alliance.
Is this the Dodgers?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers have the day off today. They start a 3-game series in Milwaukee Friday night. The Dodgers lead the San Diego Padres by a game and a half in the NL West. The NBA Western Conference Finals moves to San Antonio for games 3 and 4. Game 3 is in San Antonio Friday night, 5:30 tip-off on NBC. For you streamers out there, you can catch the game live on Peacock. San Antonio and Oklahoma City are tied at 1-1 in the best of 7. Got a few inquiries from my report this morning on the revenue HBCU football teams will earn in the 2026 season for playing teams in the Power 4 conferences. HBCU teams will earn a combined $6.9 million in gate revenues from the 15 games. I was asked, what's the highest single game payout given to an HBCU team for a football game? The answer is $1 million. That's what Ohio State gave Grambling last season for their September 6th game in Columbus. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
When the story gets twisted, who's going to tell the truth? When they cut the microphones, who's still talking? When history gets rewritten, who remembers what really happened? We do. KBLA Talk 1580. Black media isn't just important right now, it's essential. Because when mainstream outlets move on, we stay. When the headlines ignore our communities, we don't. When decisions are being made that affect Black lives in our schools, our neighborhoods, our economy, KBLA is in the room. This is more than radio. This is a lifeline, a record, a rallying cry. Black stories, Black voices, Black power.
The heat is on.
On the air and in the culture. KBLA Talk 1580. Stay connected. Stay informed. Stay loud.
Stand up!
Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download the app.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. It's thought-provoking Thursdays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Glad that so many of you are joining us on the 405, the 101, the 5, the 10, the 118, and the 110. We are coming up on the 5th anniversary of KBLA Talk 1580. Looking forward to seeing many of you at our celebration, and I will provide more information with that in the not too distant future. Today, we are going to have our conversation with Atiwa, but just before I introduce it, I want to introduce the subject matter. On May 19, 2026, the NAACP issued the following release. The NAACP today launched the Out of Bounds campaign, a national call for Black athletes, families, fans, alumni, and consumers to withhold athletic and financial support from public universities in states that have moved to limit, weaken, or erase Black voting representation in the wake of the Supreme Court's 6-3 ruling in Louisiana versus Calais, which gutted what was left of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The NAACP identified 8 priority states: Tennessee, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, South Carolina, Texas, and Georgia, and targeted flagship more than $100 million in annual revenue that continue to recruit Black athletes while their state governments dismantle the political power of Black communities. What these states have done is not a policy disagreement. It is the sprint to erase Black political power, said Derrick Johnson, president and CEO of the NAACP. These actions happened in days, in some cases hours, of a Supreme Court ruling that gives extremist lawmakers a playbook to erode Black representation. The NAACP, which will watch the same institutions that depend on Black athletes' prowess to fill their stadiums and their bank accounts, remain silent while their states strip Black communities of their voice. Out of Bounds is our answer. We are naming the contradiction. We are calling on Black athletes, families, fans, and consumers to act on it. The same power that built these programs can be redirected, and it will be. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. We're going to talk about the NAACP's call for a boycott of athletic programs in the South, particularly those states that have shown an immediate reaction to the Louisiana versus Calais decision. Our conversation on Thursday, Thought-Provoking Thursday, is with Atiba, former Deputy Executive Director for the National Black Caucus of State Legislators. He's a strategic alliance consultant and president of Party Politics US. And I might add, just factually, Black Voters Matter recently released a report that says we could lose more than a third of African American congressmen as a result of Louisiana versus Calais, and 191 state representatives and state senators. Again, Atiba is the former Deputy Executive Director for the National Black Caucus of State Legislators. Atiba, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and to our conversation.
Jesse, it's great to be with you.
Brother, share with me what your thoughts are on the NAACP's call for the boycotting of these athletic programs and institutions. I hope we can mix it up a little bit today. I think we're going to find more agreement and common ground than we have on other issues, and that's quite all right. We welcome that dialogue right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Atiba, your initial thoughts?
My initial thought is that it was a rush, and I'm just questioning the strategy of asking young athletes who've been working so hard to get into an institution of higher learning to use their athletic ability to tap into what we're calling NIL funds, to a whole number of things, and asking them to bear the brunt of responsibility of leading a boycott. I guess, I understand the sentiment and I definitely understand the need, but I think that the question I have like a how, what, where, when, and who question. And the first question is, how do we get here? And I've been asking this question for the last couple of weeks here, Jesse, because my generation, the generation perhaps before me, bear the brunt of a great deal of responsibility in all of this, because not you, not me, maybe not those listening, but there are too many out there who bear the brunt of responsibility for taking their vote for granted. And now, so something that has been kicked down the road, now we're asking these young athletes to be the leader or to be out at the forefront of this boycott. And I disagree with that.
I share your concern. I'm going to be very candid about it, and I hope we have an honest conversation, which we always do right here at KBLA Talk 1580. These are students, particularly in the states that have been outlined by the NAACP, many of whom come from extreme poverty, where their parents from the 8th grade, the 7th grade, all the way through high school have watched and helped develop their children, one, for their own futures, but the opportunity to leave poverty, meaning in many cases, they will be the first African Americans, as I was, the second African American to ever graduate from college in the name of Jesse Jackson in the history of my family's legacy. Many of us are the first generation to ever go to college. And then to turn around and tell those who have this unique opportunity to go to college that they should sacrifice. What about the NFL teams? What about the National Baseball League teams? What about the professionals who've made it? I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580. We have an interesting conversation today on what our athletes should do and the NAACP boycott. More when we come forward in our conversation with Atiba on KBLA Talk 1580.
After nearly 20 years in Congress, he knows how to get at the issues that matter the most to you. Every day, he takes a deep dive into politics, social justice, and the stories that shape our community. This is where prominent people unpack perplexing problems. Unfiltered, unapologetic, unmissable. You're inside the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you have unfiled taxes or are in debt to the IRS, this is important news. Did you know the IRS has programs specifically designed to help people struggling with tax debt? Powerful tax assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution firm. A-rated by the Better Business Bureau, their award-winning tax attorneys and licensed professionals have resolved over $3 billion of tax debt for their clients. One call to Optima can start the process, helping to put an end to your worries about wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other aggressive IRS actions. Find the best options to solve your tax problems. Call the experts at Optima Tax Relief today for a free consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Where the overlooked become unmissable. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, host of The Voice of Reason, weeknights at 7 p.m. here on KBLA Talk 1580, with a personal invitation for you to join me and Insight.me as we present The Healing Box, live at Inglewood's world-famous Miracle Theater, Saturday evening, May 23rd at 7 p.m. Look, I understand your attachment style has been running your life like a rogue algorithm, and nobody has had the courage to press pause. Until now, Dr. Pakoya McCall and yours truly are curating a night where clinicians, spiritualists, and an all-star panel of Black woman healers like Dr. Shalonda Sunshine Crawford, Dr. Jashana Johnson, and spiritualist Precious McGill will join some amazing spoken word artists and the legendary comedian Louis Dix to diagnose, disrupt, and heal your relational wreckage in real time. Listen, bring your trauma. As a matter of fact, bring your baby mama. No, bring your testimony. And if you're still texting your ex at 2 a.m., baby, you're not just invited, you're the target demo. Tickets are moving fast, so grab yours at themiracleinglewood.com before your dating history gets flagged as a pre-existing condition. That's themiracleinglewood.com. We'll see you there Saturday, May 23rd at 7 p.m.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Quality drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., and you're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. It is Thought-Provoking Thursdays, and my very special regular contributor is none other than Atiba. Atiba, welcome forward to the show.
Jesse, always great to be with you.
Atiba, can I offer a disclaimer?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone within the sound of my voice who would say that I do not understand the implications of Louisiana versus Calais is just a liar. For more than a year, this radio station and this program in particular has put an enormous amount of focus on the consequences and ramifications of our not voting and Louisiana versus Calais, a Supreme Court decision that would gut the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I was born March 11th, 1965. My dad was not at my birth. He was in Selma, Alabama. He called my mother in Greenville, South Carolina. I had just been born. He wanted to name me Selma. And my mother insisted that I be named Jesse Jackson Jr. She wasn't having none of that in my life or in her home. But there's not a single birthday in 61 years where my father hasn't called me or held me and said, I wanted to name you Selma. These are lasting memories. And as many times as I've commemorated the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, celebrating my birthday with my father and other members of my family, anyone who says that I don't understand the Voting Rights Act or Louisiana versus Calais is simply not paying attention. That's just not true. That's not what we are discussing. We are discussing a decision made by initially the NAACP, but supported by other organizations. And I'm looking right now at the Atlantic magazine, where Jamel Hill has now written a piece that is going viral called Hit Them Where It Hurts, meaning collegiate athletic programs. And all we are doing is raising questions as to whether or not singling out 17-year-olds entering college, many of whom coming from extremely poor backgrounds and their parents, and asking them to carry the burden of this hour and ignore the professional athletes who are playing football and basketball and baseball in the South, who happen to be Black, who've at one level or another, quote unquote, already made it. And the reality that in 2026, not a single NFL player was recruited from a historically Black college or university, not one. And to expect that somehow there are slots available or space available in HBCU athletic programs, many of these scholarships are already taken and provided for the existing teams and franchises, that somehow we can double the size of a football team or triple the size of a basketball team is just not realistic. And that raises a lot of questions, Atiba.
Yeah, I'm going to say something, and give me a second and try and bring this all together. First off, you mentioned where you were born. I'm going to tell you how I was born. I was born March 5th, 1972, 7 years from the March on Selma. I was born to a man and a woman who will be celebrating their 55th wedding anniversary tomorrow. A man and a woman who were fed up with America. So fed up with America that they joined the Nation of Islam. And in joining the Nation of Islam, it was under the premise and under the belief that we were going to do for self. And that's how I came up. I came up with this idea that you don't go and ask someone for something that you can go and do for yourself. So when I'm saying what I'm saying right now, and I'm very passionate about it, I'm not saying that these young athletes should not be called upon at some point. I'm saying don't put them on the front line. And by putting them on the front line, you are, in my opinion, diminishing what is the power of our ability. So I say to the NAACP, well, what about the funders and folks that sponsor you? Are we going to boycott them too? Let's be very strategic in terms of what we're calling on and be willing to say, what are we willing to do first ourselves before we go and ask a 17 and an 18-year-old child to give up their opportunity to get out of poverty? The men and women who walked across that bridge in Selma, they walked because they had the courage to step forward and be on the front lines. Where is our courage to do that? We're doing everything now through social media. When they did the Montgomery bus boycott, they were meeting in churches. They were meeting in quiet. They were meeting. They weren't doing this on social media. We get out here and we want to get the most likes, the most shares, the most this. What I saw yesterday for me bothered me because I believe that we have to build a foundation to get to where we want to go. And that by putting these young people on the front line and taking them out of these schools actually could accelerate a plan that I'll just say the other side wants. They want to pull us out of those schools. So just think about what is it that we're going to get? What is the demand is my next question. What is the demand? And then how will we get there? And how will we know that we got there? Because based on what they're doing right now, they feel they have the power. So they're not going to overturn and change the Voting Rights Act before this November election. But what we can do is, if you look at what happened in Hungary, is we can go out and we can vote in numbers too large to manipulate the outcome and send a signal that not only are we here, but we're not just here to say, oh, this is about Black America. I'm sorry, I'm taking off the Black part. I am American, and I have an American responsibility to step forward and to speak up for those young people. I have a responsibility to step forward for the men and women who were slaves, who didn't say, I want to be a free Black man. I want to be a free Black woman. They said, I want to be a free human being. And that's the part that I keep coming back of this and want to talk about, because we keep trying to carve something. That's why I started talking about the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam carved out something, and they did with only Black dollars. The only organization in America that's ever done that successfully. And yet they still got torn apart later. And I just want us to be really thinking about strategically, what is it that we are demanding and what is it that we're willing to agitate for? Not just to be able to say that we boycotted something. What is the demand and how are we going to get there?
Let me be clear. I'm not prepared to take off this Black thing. I got to keep my Black coat, my credos, my streets with me. But I do want to make this point. We just completed, after decades from Brown versus the Board of Education to the present, a major civil rights struggle for names, images, and likeness. It's called NIL. For our athletes, for whom many of these programs have been built upon to be able to use their names, their images, and their likenesses, be compensated as freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, because these programs have been built and are being built on the back of our athletes. No doubt about it. The cornerbacks, the free safeties, the wide receivers, the linemen, built these programs on the back of Southern students and some recruits in the North, where in the SEC and in these big college programs, African Americans on the basketball court, on the baseball field, have shouldered the burden in ways that golf didn't on these campuses, that tennis didn't on these campuses. And we won major civil rights battles for names, images, and likenesses, so these students can be paid and compensated for the burden that they were carrying for these institutions. We've also insisted that they graduate, that they take their coursework serious, another civil rights battle. Not just basket weaving, but real courses that teach them how to save their money, how to invest their money, how to lead productive lives after the game is over. But the idea that these students should become civil rights activists, while all of us athletes, we're athletes, look at their lives and say, listen, give up the prime years of your life and then expect some of the most difficult owners of NFL programs who, after they've heard or seen you take that stand, turn around and boycott the very athletes that did not participate in the Division I programs. And don't forget, we're talking Division I, Division II, Division III. We're talking about across the entire board and the entire spectrum. All I'm asking, and don't say that I'm not for Black political empowerment. I ran for Congress and lost, arguing and sharing with my constituents and the country how important Louisiana versus Calais was. So you are telling a lie if you say I don't understand Black political empowerment. That's not what Atiba and I are discussing. We are discussing specifically why 17 and 18-year-olds are being asked to shoulder the burden when the burden can be shouldered by some athletes who are now corporate executives, who are on ESPN, who are talking all this talk. All they got to do is say, I don't want to be on ESPN no more until y'all give us back our seats in Congress. They've already made millions. They can be in they can keep selling gym shoes, all that they've done. You don't want to sell gym shoes no more? Then give up your Nike contract and your Adidas contract. They can do it because they can afford to do it. But to ask this kid coming out of poverty to go to these universities without the benefits that they have earned from the civil rights that we helped create is deeply problematic to me, Atiba. That's about where I'm coming down on this.
I agree with you 100%. You know, and there are going to be some who are going to argue and say, oh, he doesn't want to be Black. I carry around a name that is African every single day. Atiba means understanding. It is a Nigerian Yoruba tribe chief's name. My middle name is Okong. It means understanding. What I am here and what I'm wanting to do is not just talk about this. I want to talk about how we're going to strategize and how we're going to figure out how to figure this out. And figuring it out doesn't mean that it won't come without having to take our dollars out, but let's be strategic in terms of where we agitate and how we do it. Let's not just, as you said, watch these athletes tell the current athletes to do what they can do. And I'm just, I guess, as Fannie Lou Hamer said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of us keep telling people that they're taking away our civil rights when the reality is that they've taken away our humanity. And the way that they've been able to do that is because we keep letting them do that.
I know what's next. I think you know what's next. Anyone who goes to one of these schools and plays football or basketball, we get to shout in the audience, I'm not going to watch him. I'm not going to watch her at 17 years old because they didn't follow what the organizations said do. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying they can play football, they can play basketball, and they can still have a press conference and say, we identify with the struggle of our people and we do not like what's taking place in our state with respect to minority representation. Ain't no coach going to make them not say that, hold that press conference. They can still join the No Kings March. They can still march from Selma to Montgomery. They can still come and participate. They can still vote on the campus and encourage voter registration on the campus because what, Atiba? Midterms
effing matter.
Yeah, finish that for me.
They effing matter.
They matter. And so my father was a college athlete at the University of Illinois. He went to North Carolina A&T State University, where he became student government president. He was in a leadership role in large measure on these campuses because he was a quarterback. He was admired by other students, and he led them to civil rights. But he also played the game. He also had a scholarship. I wish he had name, image, and likeness at that hour because he should have been paid for the work that he did. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. We are in conversation with Atiba. LA Talk 1580. We got a lot of more. That's what Mr. T would have said to Rocky Balboa. We got a lot of more. Come on with some more of this. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling, who is Black, is denying rumors that he plans to step down.
It's not parent shaming to say You should know where your children are.
Speaking before the Chicago City Club, Snelling said parents need to take more responsibility for teen takeovers. He also said CPD will work with community partners this summer and target areas seeing crime spikes, including vehicle thefts. A whites-only community in Arkansas is facing a federal discrimination lawsuit after Michelle Walker, a Missouri woman in a multiracial family, says she was denied the chance to buy land. The group, Return to the Land, owns 160 acres. It says it's only open to white, Christian, and heterosexual buyers. And rapper Flavor Flav is getting approval to host a parade and multi-day event in Las Vegas honoring female athletes. Clark County commissioners unanimously approved his proposed She Weekend for July. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
The $10 Gotta Have It meal deal. Swing by for half a Santa Barbara char, a 5-piece chicken bites, your choice of a select side, and a drink, all for a fresh price. The $10 Gotta Have It meal deal. Have it fresh like that. Limited time only. Price and participation varies. Tax extra. Terms at habitburger.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers have the day off today. They start a 3-game series in Milwaukee Friday night. The Dodgers lead the San Diego Padres by a game and a half in the NL West. The NBA Western Conference Finals moves to San Antonio for games 3 and 4. Game 3 is in San Antonio Friday night, 5:30 tip-off on NBC. For you streamers out there, you can catch the game live on Peacock. San Antonio and Oklahoma City are tied at 1-1 in the best of 7. Got a few inquiries from my report this morning on the revenue HBCU football teams will earn in the 2026 season for playing teams in the Power 4 conferences. HBCU teams will earn a combined $6.9 million in gate revenues from the 15 games. I was asked, what's the highest single game payout given to an HBCU team for a football game? The answer is $1 million. That's what Ohio State gave Grambling last season for their September 6th game in Columbus. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
When the story gets twisted, who's going to tell the truth? When they cut the microphones, who's still talking? When history gets rewritten, who remembers what really happened? We do. KBLA Talk 1580. Black media isn't just important right now, it's essential. Because when mainstream outlets move on, we stay. When the headlines ignore our communities, we don't. When decisions are being made that affect Black lives in our schools, our neighborhoods, our economy, KBLA is in the room. This is more than radio. This is a lifeline, a record, a rallying cry. Black stories, Black voices, Black power.
The heat is on.
On the air and in the culture. KBLA Talk 1580. Stay connected. Stay informed. Stay loud.
Stand up!
Let's be real. For too long, too many of our students have sat in overcrowded classrooms in underfunded public schools.
But as head of the San Diego School Board, Richard Barrera changed that.
Under Barrera's leadership, student literacy rose from the state average all the way to #1 among major urban school districts. Barrera led the way for smaller classrooms and for teachers to be paid what they're worth.
Barrera funded more counselors and mental health services, and community schools that teach real-world skills for future jobs.
A community organizer who became an education leader to fight for our kids. The only candidate for State Superintendent of Public Instruction,
backed by the 310,000 classroom educators of the California Teachers Association. Vote Democrat Richard Barrera for State Superintendent.
Ad paid for by California Teachers Association Independent Expenditure Committee, not authorized by a candidate or committee controlled by a candidate.
Hi, I'm Fred Martin, founder of Compton Kids Club. I just want to talk about the authenticity and tell y'all about my homeboy, Tom Steyer. Tom is a rock star. When I met him, Tom gave a grant to schools in San Francisco. All the kids were on probation. We were flying instructors for 2 years to come and help those kids doing performing arts and turning their life around. Some of the kids that he supported, they've graduated from UCLA. Let's fast forward. Tom is in schools in Compton, hanging out with the kids in the piano classes. Brother Tom Steyer hangs out in the studio with us. These are the seeds that he's planted. This has nothing to do with elections. What's coming out of his mouth is not a campaign speech. It's authentic. And when he say he walks away from a business because he want to do his values, He ain't making that up because he's running for governor. This man is real.
Ad paid for by Steyer for Governor 2026.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download the app.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're in conversation with Jesse Jackson Jr. and Atiba, our Thursday regular contributor. Atiba has worked as a TV political contributor for BNC News, The Heat, In the Know with Mo, The Leslie Marshall Show, iHeartRadio, GovExec, 96.3 WHUR, and One America News Network. This coming Friday, tomorrow, for the first time on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, we are going to be taking some call-ins at our show. We're testing our new technology, 833-SHOW. That's spelled SHOW-JJJ. 833-SHOW, SHOW-JJJ, or 833-746-9555. Barbara Jean, Miss Van Zant, our regular listeners, I'm counting on you all to call into the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I'd like to hear your voices, and we have our conversation together, talk about the show for the week, and talk about other critical issues. And just as I bring Atiba now forward, I want to say this, Atiba. I need Joe Louis, and our country does, to knock out Max Schmeling. I need Jackie Robinson to play for the Dodgers and hit that home run. I need Jesse Owens to run his race before Hitler and prove to the world that we are better, that we are not inferior, that we are capable, qualified, equal, and in some cases, superior. I need those brothers in the Olympics to put on their black gloves and hold their fists straight up in the air. I need Jim Brown, Lou Alcindor, Muhammad Ali, and Bill Russell to have their press conference standing up for Muhammad Ali. I need Ali to protest the Vietnam War. And I need young college students today that when they score a touchdown and go into the end zone, that they put their glove on and put their fist up and then look right in the camera and say, taxation without representation is tyranny. And I'm going to keep running and I'm going to keep delivering that message because I have that right to deliver that message. The Black athlete plays an important role in our civil rights struggle. And we just can't immediately dismiss them and the opportunity to talk about segregation. Because I'm telling you, just as sure as I'm sitting here, Brown versus the Board of Education, which is responsible for the desegregation of those state schools, is on the docket in this Supreme Court. Atiba?
Yeah, it's on the docket, and I'm going to push back and just say we want the same thing, but I also want to make sure that we bring as many people forward because there's so many people that are being left behind. Being left behind because we're talking about Brown versus Board of Education, but we're not talking enough about how many of our young people are not taking their education seriously. And a lot of it is because they are fighting or their parents are trying to figure out how to feed them, how to keep a roof over their head. We have an economic crisis that is going on in America, and it's not just one that is affecting Black people or brown people, it's affecting all people. But one of the things I sent you yesterday, Jesse, was a report from Black Men Vote. They released a new poll on Wednesday revealing an engagement gap among young Black men in key states ahead of the 2026 midterms. And HIT Strategy is a Washington-based research firm found in a multi-state survey that while most Black male voters recognize the importance of voting, many remain undecided about participating in this year's elections. That scares me. We have this campaign about midterms effing matter, and we want to do and engage and get as many people out to vote as we possibly can. But we've got to figure out not just how we're going to message. We've got to figure out what is the message that they need to hear from us. We've got to go to them. We've got to talk to them. We've got to figure out why is it that they feel disengaged? Why do they feel that that it's okay not to vote? Because when I asked the question, how did we get here? It's because we keep expecting each of us to go and vote, and each of us are not. And each of us, whether or not we're having these conversations at our dinner tables or we're having them on our phones, we can't just say you have to go vote. We have to figure out what is it going to take to motivate them to go vote. And so when we're talking about athletes in the South, and let's be clear, we know that there are women athletes, but we know that it's the male athletes that are the ones who get this most of this NIL money. And they're the ones that people are trying to target. But this is a very demographic that they're talking about in this report that may not vote. So we're asking them to boycott, but we're not trying to figure out how we're going to help them to be part of this process and make sure that they vote with us.
Yeah, that's not an easy question. Let me share with you something that I just experienced in the city of Chicago. I was leading a voter registration drive for my own campaign, and I was encouraging other elected officials to help me register voters in their respective jurisdictions. I was going to do it anyway, and I did do it anyway, but the African-American elected officials were very clear to me. Jesse, be careful registering people to vote in my area. All my voters are ready to come out for me. And I said, well, yeah, but we need voters to come out for everybody, not just you. He said, well, no, I don't want to upset the balance in my jurisdiction because voters who turn out for me, even if no one else shows up, these voters turn out for me, and they're key to my staying in as mayor or in as city councilman or in as trustee. And so they're in a game now, unlike the game of registering all African Americans, that is the large product of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, or Jesse Jackson, who would travel to districts all across the country to help Jim Clyburn in 92, to help Benny Thompson in Mississippi, to help Harold Ford Jr. in the state of Tennessee at the time, and Senior, to help Cleo Fields in Louisiana. These are African Americans that Jesse Jackson, in large measure in his campaign, because he's from the South Side of Chicago, registered Black people to vote because he didn't care. He wanted Black people to turn out. But increasingly, and the Democratic Party has a problem with voter registration, locals don't want massive turnout because they can't control the vote that benefits them specifically. It's a selfless process for getting people to vote. Now, assuming all African American men vote, it's still not enough to win 270 electoral votes. And increasingly, I'm hearing Democrats retreat from the South. Now we're telling Black athletes, young Black athletes, don't play at Southern schools. That's a retreat. Jesse Jackson helped advance the South Carolina primary as the first Democratic primary after Iowa and New Hampshire in the political process. Now Illinois wants to be the first state, and they're lobbying the Democratic National Committee to move them up ahead of South Carolina in the process. They also want the Democratic Convention in Chicago again. It's a nice way of saying that the liberal Democrats of Chicago want to pick a president. They want to be first so they can tell the rest of the country, we got a liberal Democratic nominee out of Chicago, like that's going to play well in red America, like that's going to play well in the South or in the West, when they shouldn't tamper with the Democratic primary election process at all, because we need South Carolina to send a signal to Black voters, just as Jim Clyburn sent a signal to Black voters in the South with the endorsement of Barack Obama, with the endorsement of Hillary Clinton, with the endorsement of Joe Biden, and with the endorsement of Kamala Harris. We need that signal in the South for people who do vote. In addition, for people like me who spend my time registering Black people to vote and inspiring them to vote. I hope the Negro that I meet in the barbershop votes, but I only got so much time of my day to convince him. If I can find 2 or 3 other people in the same vicinity who will vote, I'll go get them. Even while he's sitting around philosophizing about what it means to lose the right to vote, to lose Reconstruction, and what somebody ain't done for him lately. I deal with these Negroes all the time, man. I'm telling you, man. I'm not just on the radio. I'm dealing with them.
And the thing is that, Jesse, for me, it's like, one, I would like to see everybody get registered to vote. You're not going to hear me tell you who I think you should vote for. That is your choice. What you will hear me say is register to vote. Keep checking to make sure that your registration is intact and so that you can vote. Make sure you have your voter IDs and check the rules and check and see where you have to go vote. All these things stay in the game. But most importantly, vote, vote, vote.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We're in conversation with Atiba. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
My name is Cynthia Mitchell. I've been an emergency room nurse in Los Angeles County for 25 years. I've been there through every fire season, every outbreak, every earthquake. Every time Los Angeles needed us, the doctors and nurses of Los Angeles County showed up. And right now, I'm seeing another disaster coming. Trump's cuts to Los Angeles County's healthcare system are a public health crisis in the making. Medi-Cal, public hospitals, disaster preparedness are all at risk, but we can stop it. Measure ER fights back against these cuts. For a half a penny, we keep emergency rooms open, care within reach for working families, and doctors and nurses serving the communities we love. When you vote yes on Measure ER, you're not just voting for healthcare, you're voting for LA. Vote yes on Measure ER by June 2nd.
Ad paid for by Yes on ER, Restore Healthcare for Angelenos, sponsored by St. John's Community Health and Health Justice Action Fund. Ad committee top funder, St. John's Community Health.
Going to a World Cup match in LA this summer? Ditch the parking stress and ride Metro. With direct service from across LA County, it's the easy way to get there for just $1.75 each way.
Hey, LA County, it's time to vote. Return your ballot early at any official ballot drop box. Visit plan.lavote.gov to make your voting plan today. Brought to you by the Los Angeles County Registrar.
Let's be real. For too long, too many of our students have sat in overcrowded classrooms in underfunded public schools.
But as head of the San Diego School Board, Richard Barrera changed that.
Under Barrera's leadership, student literacy rose from the state average all the way to #1 among major urban school districts. Barrera led the way for smaller classrooms and for teachers to be paid what they're worth.
Barrera funded more counselors and mental health services, and community schools that teach real-world skills for future jobs.
A community organizer who became an education leader to fight for our kids. The only candidate for State Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Backed by the 310,000 classroom educators of the California Teachers Association. Vote Democrat Richard Barrera for State Superintendent.
Ad paid for by California Teachers Association Independent Expenditure Committee, not authorized by a candidate or committee controlled by a candidate.
Are you still pouring gallons and gallons of water into a thirsty lawn that never seems to get enough water? LADWP has a special offer for a free water-saving front yard refresh available to eligible LADWP residential customers. LADWP handles all the work, including lawn removal, installing an efficient irrigation system, and planting beautiful California-friendly plants. Save water and lower your bill with a free front yard refresh. See if you qualify at LADWP.com/LEAP. That's LADWP.com/LEAP.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We are in conversation on Thought Provoking Thursday with Atiba. Atiba, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Happy to be here, Jesse.
Atiba, how can we support your work? How can we get these T-shirts? And tell us about Saving Grace.
Sure, thank you. So first off, this election, 2026 midterm election, is so important. If you don't believe me, look at 2018 when women mobilized after the 2016 election and elected more women to Congress than at any other point in the history of this country in 2018. I say this because 2026 is an important midterm election year. You can go to midtermseffingmatter.com. On our site, you can register to vote. You can check your registration. You can see where it is that you have to go vote. You can check and see what's on your ballot. You can do a whole number of things. And you can also get one of the shirts so you can wear the message across your chest, midterms effing matter, because they really, 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 really matter. Every election matters, as John Lewis wrote, and he wrote in his autobiography to me. He said, with faith and hope, keep your eyes on the prize. And for me, the prize is November the 3rd, 2026. And there are primaries that are going on in your states. You can check on your website, on our website also, to see when the primaries are happening in your state. Whatever you do, whatever site it is you go to, just make sure you stay engaged. And as we're talking about athletes,
midterms going on in Los Angeles, California right now.
Jesse, I'm gonna tell people, you're the coach. You've been coaching us about this decision for a long time about what it could happen. So California, your primary is coming up. I'm telling you, ask Jesse, ask your people, whatever, just ask to be put in the game. And the only way you can be in the game is this, if you vote. And we have to vote this election in numbers that are too large to manipulate the outcome.
I understand that the early voting process in California has started. And so that's good news. Those of you who can hear our voices, if you have no idea where you're going to be on election day, then you should get an election ballot. You should mail in your ballot. You should find out how you can vote at your local deputy registrar or local clerk's office. Find out what that process is. Pay attention. You don't need to stand in long lines. You can get your vote cast and get it cast now and get it cast early so that you can own your part of this American experiment and this pie. Atiba, let me pivot for a second to the $1.8 billion fund that Donald Trump has been able to negotiate between the Treasury and the Department of Justice, a kind of reparations fund. Some newspaper articles have called it a white grievance fund. What are your thoughts about that? It seems to me that that presidents now have an unusual power for people who have grievances to actually be able to write them a check.
You know what? This is going to tick off some people, but I'm going to say I'm applauding, because we are seeing the power of what the president can do if the president sets his mind or her mind to it. And I'm saying it from this standpoint. We've had so many presidents who have come in and said they couldn't do something, and yet we're seeing it happen right before our eyes. And what's actually interesting is that, according to The Hill, Republicans punt on reconciliation amid furious disagreement over anti-weaponization fund. So there's some infighting going on their side as it relates to this. But just like I just said, keep your eyes on the prize. You know, Jesse, my eyes are focused on what it is that I can do, because there's too many things that keep happening to us. And I just keep feeling like we have to stay focused on what we can do and keep our eyes on that prize.
I agree with that. Before we get to your word of hope, though, I do want to ask this question. You're applauding Trump because he is showing you, and I respect that, what the presidency can do. Now, what if I laid down the gauntlet and said that, you know, I want to hear a Democratic president run saying they're going to write us a check? Now, I want to build support around the Democratic candidate or whatever, who's prepared to do exactly what Donald Trump is doing, or you're going to come back and say, no. What he had the power to do, I don't have the power to do, like I'm stupid. Like people who are listening to us are crazy. Like we are not witnessing with our own eyes exactly what we're seeing.
We got the receipts. We got the receipts. We get the receipts. We're just get the receipts, Jesse. That's all I'm saying.
It's okay for us to turn our expectations, right, to the Democrats and ask them, are you prepared to do for us what he's doing for his crowd? That's not unreasonable.
I'm not even going to go to the Democrats. I'm going to say what we can do. This is the power of the people. I think this is the most amazing time for us right now, Jesse, to go back and understand the history of this country, to understand the Thomas Jeffersons, to see what he wrote on his tombstone about religious freedom. All these things that happened 250 years ago, it's not an accident that is happening right now in the 250th anniversary of this country. America is not defined by a name. America is defined by its citizens. And if we don't take responsibility as citizens and we continue to just let this happen and complain and complain and complain, but don't do and do and do, because the framers of that Constitution, the founders of this country, the women who advised, the women who told their husbands what they should do, even though they don't get the credit for it, they are the ones that built this country. We right now, this is our call. We the people.
I respect that.
For the people, by the people, of the people.
I'm going to give you this word of hope right now because we are closing in on the top of the hour. But let me be crystal clear so that no one's confused about what I'm saying. I want Gavin Newsom to promise me when he becomes president, he's going to write me a check. And I know there are a lot of people in Crenshaw and South Central who feel exactly the way I feel on this question. I want J.B. Pritzker to tell me, well, when are we going to get our check? Our repair for damage done, for grievances, for the concerns that we keep raising, for people who are being shot down in the streets and not being compensated, for these underfunded schools, for our opportunities at healthcare and housing and education. And I'd rather it not come, quite frankly, in the form of a personal check to me. Improve the schools, build more hospitals, provide more doctors, build better sidewalks and roads in my community, provide more safety. Yeah, I'm all for what we can do for ourselves. I ain't got no problem with self-help. I'm talking about what government of, for, and by the people is supposed to do on the 250th anniversary, not of its citizens, but of its idea.
And part of that, Jesse, is staying engaged. We cannot just vote and then we can't just like go home and wipe our hands and say, oh, I'm done, I voted. No, we have to stay engaged. We have to keep pressing their foot to the fire. We have to hold them accountable. And then when they don't do it, we can't just say, oh, I'm going to vote for them because they're popular, because I like them, because they're a Democrat. You got to find who is the person that's going to go and do what you need them to do. That's what staying engaged in this process is. You cannot just say, oh, I voted for them and I hope they do the right thing. You have to vote for them and you have to demand that they do the right thing. That's why they marched in 63. That's why they marched in 65. That's why all these things that have happened that we think that just happened just by some good-natured heart. No, it happened because they were forced to do it.
Thank you, Atiba. I'm going to give you 2 minutes for your word of hope, but I just want to add, Stewart 2004, it is the government's job to provide for its people. And a government that doesn't provide for its people is not a government at all. Atiba, a word of hope.
Well, I like this saying that politicians should be changed like diapers, often and frequently. The thing is that we keep revisiting the same things. My hope is that in my lifetime that we're not just talking about civil, we're talking about human. We want to fight against racism, fascism, feminism, sexism, all these isms. We have to get back to the core of our humanity, of who we are as human beings, and see each other as human beings. I think we have to get back to the being cordial to one another, whether or not we agree or not. We can agree to disagree, but what we have to do or can do, I don't want to use the word have to, but we can do, and what I'm hopeful that we do is that we find in each other our humanity and our commonality within our humanity. I have faith that God has us going through this for a reason, and that out of this something beautiful is going to come from it. But in order for it to come, we have to feel this pressure. And it hurts, but something beautiful is going to come from it, but we got to do the work.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling, who is black, is denying rumors that he plans to step down.
It's not parent shaming to say that you should know where your children are.
Speaking before the Chicago City Club, Snelling said parents need to take more responsibility for teen takeovers. He also said CPD will work with community partners this summer and target areas seeing crime spikes, including vehicle thefts. A whites-only community in Arkansas is facing a federal discrimination lawsuit after Michelle Walker, a Missouri woman in a multiracial family, says she was denied the chance to buy land. The group, Return to the Land, owns 160 acres. It says it's only open to white, Christian, and heterosexual buyers. And rapper Flavor Flav is getting approval to host a parade and multi-day event in Las Vegas honoring female athletes. Clark County commissioners unanimously approved his proposed She Weekend for July. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
PCH is open. Take the 101 freeway to Canaan Road. Malibu is open for business. Enjoy a scenic drive through the mountains and return to the beautiful beach. A beach day is always a better day. It's open and waiting for you.
Sponsored by Recreation Alliance.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers have the day off today. They start a 3-game series in Milwaukee Friday night. The Dodgers lead the San Diego Padres by a game and a half in the NL West. The NBA Western Conference Finals moves to San Antonio for games 3 and 4. Game 3 is in San Antonio Friday night, 5:30 tip-off on NBC. For you streamers out there, you can catch the game live on Peacock. San Antonio and Oklahoma City are tied at 1-1 in the best of 7. Got a few inquiries from my report this morning on the revenue HBCU football teams will earn in the 2026 season for playing teams in the Power 4 conferences. HBCU teams will earn a combined $6.9 million in gate revenues from the 15 games. I was asked what's the highest single game payout given to an HBCU team for a football game. The answer is $1 million. That's what Ohio State gave Grambling last season for their September 6th game in Columbus. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Every day on KBLA Talk 1580, it's like a live town hall meeting over the airwaves. Politics, culture, community, justice, nothing is off the table. We take more listener calls, spark more honest conversations, and challenge more assumptions than any talk station in Southern California. Because good ideas matter more than ideology. KBLA Talk 1580, your station, your voice, your city. Listen live at KBLA 1580 AM on our free KBLA 1580 app or on our website at KBLA1580.com.
Unapologetically progressive.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download the app.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We are now in the World House with Johnny Mack on Thought Provoking Thursdays. Dr. Mack is a social entrepreneur, a scholar practitioner with an expertise in subject areas of peace, conflict, social change, and movements. His research includes extensive study of Martin Luther King Jr.'s logic of nonviolence and the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. He explicates Dr. King's logic of nonviolence using Dr. King's call to restructure the social edifice and particularly its triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism with a revolution of values that is effected through peaceable power. Johnny, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and the world. Johnny, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jesse. How are you? Great to be here.
It's always a pleasure, Johnny. We're in the World House, and so there's some places in the world that in this hour we need to travel. And maybe in a later segment, I want to raise this question on the question of Dr. King, whether or not today's marches and protests are effective. Let's save that for the end of the show. Johnny, the president of the United States is saber rattling in Cuba. He has now indicted the former president of Cuba, Raul Castro. African Americans have a long history of working with Cuban leadership, including the late Fidel Castro, on the liberation struggles, not only in sub-Saharan Africa. In fact, one could argue there would be no free Mandela but for the support that Cuba provided to the people of Angola and Namibia and in these countries with Samora Machel and others in the struggle for their freedom and revolution against colonialism. Can you help our leaders with how significant it is for the U.S. to intervene into the affairs of Cuba the ways in which it has at this hour?
Well, it's obviously very significant, Jesse. As you've indicated, Cuba has a very significant Afro population, or population of African descent, some 10 to 55%, depending upon how we define African descent, including mestizo or mulatto individuals who have African blood, particularly if we follow, Jesse, that one drop rule. The point is, it's not just Cuba. It is a panoply of countries throughout the Caribbean and South America, whether it's Brazil, Colombia, Guyana, all of these countries in the Caribbean. Remember, we have Haiti and what happened in Venezuela. But these countries represent significant resources, whether they are minerals or populations or strategic positions. And the goal of this administration is to control completely, wholly, the entire Western Hemisphere. This is part of the restructuring and reordering of the global structure. And that's really what's happening here, Jesse.
I think no truer words have been spoken. I mean, at the same time that the U.S. is making this, if you will, empire-based move across the Caribbean and South America, we're reflective of the great revolutionaries like Fidel Castro and Che Guevara and Aristide when he was a revolutionary, and some of the fighters that have lost their lives in the struggle against colonialism. And in one fell swoop, an American election, towards our previous guest's point, midterms effing matter, an American election with the wrong person at the helm can literally begin a neo-colonialist process that is presently underway in the Western Hemisphere. Johnny, we have about 3 minutes before we come forward. American expansionism, however, is also coupled with Donald Trump's for American isolationism that is making all American things great, or MAGA, if you will, locking our borders while insisting at the same time for access to these critical minerals, critical reserves. But it's not clear that people of color in the Caribbean or people of color in South America are going to be the beneficiaries of the very minerals that are underneath their feet at this juncture. And it seems to me that at some point in time, when America can no longer sustain its empire, we're looking at a series of constant revolutions that will be taking place quite possibly for many decades to come. Johnny?
You mentioned American expansionism versus isolationism. I'll push back just slightly on that. Clearly, the current administration has talked a great deal about American isolationism, America first in that regard. I'm not so sure that the expansionism is so much about America as it is about certain Americans.
Wow.
And that the expansion does not include, as many other things do not include, certain groups and populations in this country, as they are marginalized in so many different ways. So I'm not so sure that it's correct to characterize the expansion as a expansion of all of America, but only, I would argue, certain elements of and groups in these United States of America.
I think that's accurate. I think that I may have overstated the case. When I say expansionism, I'm thinking when Trump offers the people of Greenland an opportunity to be a state with 2 senators, and he has not made the offer yet, but should there be an American intervention into Cuba, there is talk in certain circles about the possibility of Cuba becoming the 51st state of the United States. It's just on and on and on. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We are talking about the expansion of the American empire. More when we come back and come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
After nearly 20 years in Congress, he knows how to get at the issues that matter the most to you. Every day, he takes a deep dive into politics, social justice, and the stories that shape our community. This is where prominent people unpack perplexing problems. Unfiltered, unapologetic, unmissable. You're inside the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you have unfiled taxes or are in debt to the IRS, this is important news. Did you know the IRS has programs specifically designed to help people struggling with tax debt? Powerful tax assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution firm. A-rated by the Better Business Bureau, their award-winning tax attorneys and licensed professionals have resolved over $3 billion of tax debt for their clients. One call to Optima can start the process, helping to put an end to your worries about wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other aggressive IRS actions. Find the best options to solve your tax problems. Call the experts at Optima Tax Relief today for a free consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project. Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail, and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail. Because freedom should be free.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, host of The Voice of Reason, weeknights at 7 p.m. here on KBLA Talk 1580, with a personal invitation for you to join me and Insight.me as we present The Healing Box, live at Inglewood's world-famous Miracle Theater, Saturday evening, May 23rd at 7 p.m. Look, I understand your attachment style has been running your life like a rogue algorithm, and nobody has had the courage to press pause. Until now, Dr. Pakoya McCall and yours truly are curating a night where clinicians, spiritualists, and an all-star panel of Black woman healers like Dr. Shalonda Sunshine Crawford, Dr. Jashana Johnson, and spiritualist Precious McGill will join some amazing spoken word artists and the legendary comedian Louis Dix to diagnose, disrupt, and heal your relational wreckage in real time. Listen, bring your trauma. As a matter of fact, bring your baby mama. No, bring your testimony. And if you're still texting your ex at 2 a.m., baby, you're not just invited, you're the target demo. Tickets are moving fast, so grab yours at themiracleinglewood.com before your dating history gets flagged as a pre-existing condition. That's themiracleinglewood.com. We'll see you there Saturday, May 23rd at 7 p.m.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Junior Show. King Folly drops the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. We're in the World House with Dr. Johnny Mack on Thought Provoking Thursday. Dr. Mack's seminal work, After Confrontation, Then What?, challenges the putative logic of nonviolent social change theory and practice. Particularly, he rearticulates nonviolence beyond the traditional understanding of nonviolent struggle as principally nonviolent resistance. Dr. Mack, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and your show, The World House.
Great to be here.
Dr. Mack, let me ask you this question. If I can pivot for a moment to what seems to be Trump's failed talks in Iran. In your opinion that NATO might possibly force the reopening of the Hormuz Strait because of the world economy and what its consequences and ramifications could be for the poor in Africa, in South America, in Cuba, a country that is struggling without something as basic as the energy needs to have lights on at night, laying the foundation for the kind of corruption that only Donald Trump can bring to the people of Cuba at this hour?
If I understand your question, Jesse, correctly, it is a question of priority. That is, will NATO be more concerned about what is happening in the Strait than what is happening in the Caribbean, and particularly relative to Cuba? Have I understood your question correctly?
Yes, sir, you do.
Well, indeed. You know, Jesse, I think you are right, or at least implied in your question. There is, and will continue to be, in my judgment, much more concerned about the impact of what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz versus the impact of what is happening relative to the emerging crisis between Cuba and the United States. Not justifiably so. The impact of shutting down that strait or controlling who goes in and who comes out of that strait is profound with respect to the entire globe, virtually affecting the entire globe. And so there's good reason, in my judgment, for that. But I'm not sure that prioritizing here is the issue. All of these issues in terms of global crises are significant. They're important. They impact the lives of ordinary people and put into question the fundamental dignity and worth of every global citizen. That's the issue here, it seems to me.
Johnny, let me ask you this question. What would Dr. King say, or what would he do in light of the circumstances that we have been presented with at this hour?
If we stick with both of the crises, there are many others, of course. What's happening, again, as we often comment on, between Russia and Ukraine, or the many crises in Africa right now, particularly in East Africa and Somalia, in South Sudan, etc. What would King say is your question. We can't be certain ever exactly what he would say, but we can certainly extrapolate from where he left off. And that is that he saw in his prescient way these crises unfolding, and we've talked about that in his speech on Vietnam, Jesse. And you know, we should never forget. We should always keep that speech in front of us as we deal with the crises like those that we face today, Jesse. King, again, is so prescient. He is so in tune with the dominance and the control of the greed, the outright greed of largely the Western world, and particularly, as King pointed out, his own nation, the United States. And he gives us a model of what we must do to create a just and peaceful world. And so, given the crises as we see them today, one only need read Beyond Vietnam, or A Time to Break Silence, as it is also known, to really understand how King would view these crises today.
Johnny, let me ask you this question, because I know that we oftentimes on our programs, but also in our dialogue, we wear Dr. King out. I'm wondering, when Dr. King referred to the Mahatma to Gandhi as inevitable, and if he didn't come, we would have to create our own version of Mohandas K. Gandhi. And if Jesus didn't come back, we would have to create our own version of Mohandas K. Gandhi, because the world needs at this hour a sensible reflection upon who we are as human beings, beyond nationalism, beyond our own race, beyond our own ethnicity, calling us to a higher purpose as people. Dr. King kind of hung around this idea of mutuality and mutual existence. And I'm wondering at this hour, in the absence of any of the great philosophers or even the Lord himself, what is it that we have to create in terms of the spirit energy to sharpen the pencil on the question of our common humanity? Johnny?
Yes, Jesse, it is the question. And the operative word is the pronoun we. What do we have to do? And Jesse, it is us. It is all of us waiting for a Messiah, waiting for a king or a Gandhi, may find us waiting until it's too late. Within each and every one of us, I believe, and I think King would agree, is that very spirit that you call forth in your question. You and Atiba talked about it in the last hour. We have to vote. Each and every one of us must take the responsibility. We must do our part. And so we are the ones we are waiting on. Jesse, I think you're muted.
Johnny, how does China respond to the people of the world or to the U.S. Versus the U.S. government? How should we view in this moment? Because as Dr. King sought to identify with poor people around the world in Vietnam, or to even identify with the common humanity of sub-Saharan Africans, or with the vast majority of people in the world, the Chinese and others who have a level of hegemony in the global economy, I'm thinking in this moment that they would be calling Dr. King a communist and everything else for fighting for the common humanity of people who are struggling. And I do want to pivot this question because of your global involvement, your global significance, and what you have traveled and seen yourself. I don't think it's an accident that the globe at this hour, at a time when we're cutting funding to NIH, to the Centers for Disease Control, that out of Africa itself is now emerging a plague that is forcing the first and developing world to slow down and to reflect upon the role that we play with our science in helping provide security for people, not only in the United States, but around the world. In a real sense, our agencies on the ground in Africa have been a first line of defense for the spread of global plagues that have consequences for humanity itself. No known cure for Ebola.
You know, Jesse, toward the end of the last century, we saw the fall of the Berlin Wall. At that time, the United States was uniquely in a position to be the preeminent hegemon, as we call it, the master of the universe, so to speak. It held a position unmatched and unchallenged by any other nation state. You started your question with China. And what we find now, 30 40 years later, that China is one of the, well, arguably the second most dominant nation state on the globe. Its significance is quite bothersome, it seems to me, in many ways. Certainly to what the United States would like to be and do regarding, the trajectory of the global structure. I remember recently reading something. No, actually, I think it was an interview with Alika Dangote, when asked who or what nation was the most significant outside of the African continent in terms of its growth, its development, and its future. And he said, without question, it's China. And so when we talk about isolationism, as we did before the break, and what Trump is doing, China will play a significant role moving forward. Question is, how do we respond to it? How those of us who do not share in the expansionism, as we discussed before the break, how do we respond to the impact as a global polity, for example, when we think about the African diaspora, a global polity, if we can use that term, how does it respond to this struggle between nations and the current and future structure of world order? It's a very big question that we should not ignore. We should understand it, and we should have a position on it. We should respond to it. I hope that approach is answering your question, Jesse, because it's a very important one.
I certainly hope we respond to it as good neighbors. I'm sitting here this moment listening to you, and I'm thinking about the image of God, and if we're all children of God, when I think about the percentage of Chinese people that live in the world, the people of China, and I look at 1/8 of the world being of African descent, and we think about nearly 1/3 of the world, maybe half of the people of the world are Chinese or some significant number like that God is at least 1/8 African and maybe 3/4 Chinese. And any illusion that we see of what the image of God is, if all of humanity is created in God's image, we need to have a good neighbor policy with just about everybody, because the image of God is constantly changing with the demographics of the world. I mean, if his or her or the spirit energy's face is presenting itself, it is presenting itself in the form of an ever expanding humanity that we have an obligation to look at, to work with, not to proselytize, not to impose our own feelings or belief upon them, whether they are believers or non-believers. It seems to me that we have an obligation to respect in the world house each and every citizen that exists therein, and value who they are under whatever we believe is a creator, is God, is the spirit energy that directs human history. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest regularly on Thursdays is Dr. Johnny Mack. I know that when we come forward in a moment, Johnny, we'll try and pick up on some of these questions. I do want to ask how we can support your work, but I also want to ask the question as to whether or not our movements and marches today, are they as effective as they were in the very truncated period, let's say roughly from the death of Emmett Till to the assassination of Malcolm and Martin. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward, right here on KBLA.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Tony Carruthers, who is Black, avoided execution in Tennessee Thursday for 3 1994 kidnappings and murders after prison officials could not find a vein for lethal injection.
That same man said something to the effect of, "What's the pain like?"
Tennessee Governor Bill Lee has granted a 1-year reprieve for the execution. The Democratic National Committee's 2024 autopsy is now public. The nearly 200-page report written by Democratic strategist Paul Rivera says former President Joe Biden's campaign and White House failed to set up former Vice President Kamala Harris for success. The report also says Harris struggled to define herself and President Trump, though replacing Biden with Harris helped other Democrats win. And Americans returning from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Uganda, or South Sudan must now enter the U.S. through Washington Dulles for enhanced screening due to rising Ebola concerns. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
PCH is open. Take the 101 freeway to Canaan Road. Malibu is open for business. Enjoy a scenic drive through the mountains and return to the beautiful beach. A beach day is always a better day. It's open and waiting for you.
Sponsored by Recreation Alliance.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers have the day off today. They start a 3-game series in Milwaukee Friday night. The Dodgers lead the San Diego Padres by a game and a half in the NL West. The NBA Western Conference Finals moves to San Antonio for games 3 and 4. Game 3 is in San Antonio Friday night, 5:30 tip-off on NBC. For you streamers out there, you can catch the game live on Peacock. San Antonio and Oklahoma City are tied at 1-1 in the best of 7. Got a few inquiries from my report this morning on the revenue HBCU football teams will earn in the 2026 season for playing teams in the Power 4 conferences. HBCU teams will earn a combined $6.9 million in gate revenues from the 15 games. I was asked, what's the highest single game payout given to an HBCU team for a football game? The answer is $1 million. That's what Ohio State gave Grambling last season for their September 6th game in Columbus. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Every day on KBLA Talk 1580, it's like a live town hall meeting over the airwaves. Politics, culture, community, justice, nothing is off the table. We take more listener calls, spark more honest conversations, and challenge more assumptions than any talk station in Southern California. Because good ideas matter more than ideology. KBLA Talk 1580, your station, your voice, your city. Listen live at KBLA 1580 AM on our free KBLA 1580 app or on our website at KBLA1580.com.
Unapologetically progressive.
Let's be real. For too long, too many of our students have sat in overcrowded classrooms in underfunded public schools.
But as head of the San Diego School Board, Richard Barrera changed that.
Under Barrera's leadership, student literacy rose from the state average all the way to #1 among major urban school districts. Barrera led the way for smaller classrooms and for teachers to be paid what they're worth.
Barrera funded more counselors and mental health services, and community schools that teach real-world skills for future jobs.
A community organizer who became an education leader to fight for our kids. The only candidate for State Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Backed by the 310,000 classroom educators of the California Teachers Association. Vote Democrat Richard Barrera for State Superintendent.
Ad paid for by California Teachers Association Independent Expenditure Committee. Not authorized by a candidate or committee controlled by a candidate.
Every voice matters, especially the ones they told to be quiet. This is KBLA Talk 1580. 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is connecting you with services and solutions. Domestic violence and family violence is when someone in an intimate or family relationship tries to gain or maintain power and control over another through a wide range of abusive behaviors. Every single act may amount to abuse. Abuse can take on various forms: psychological and emotional, physical and economic, and sexual abuse. The Genesee Center Incorporated is a nationally recognized nonprofit domestic violence prevention and intervention organization, housing women and children from 30 days up to 2 years through emergency and transitional shelters. The Genesee Center also provides support services like mental health counseling, life skills classes, computer training, job referrals, for children, field trips, tutoring, and comprehensive direct legal services. If you need help or you'd like to donate or volunteer, call the Genesee Hotline, 1-800-479-7328. That's 1-800-479-7328, or visit Genesee.org. Everyone has the right to be safe. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Folly, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 15.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We are in Thought-Provoking Thursdays. We're in the World House with Dr. Johnny Mack. But tomorrow is a new milestone for the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We are testing out the technology on KBLA Talk 1580 for those of you in Los Angeles, around the country, and around the world to call in to our 1-800 number. That number is 833-SHOW-JJJ, 833-746-9555, 833-746-9555. I want to have an interactive program so we can take questions from callers, put up our best arguments, ask our questions. But I need to test the technology before we move it to other hours on the program. And Fridays are always the best opportunity to do that. I hope those of you who can hear my voice are willing to join us in our test tomorrow right here at KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., and I'm grateful, tremendously grateful for this opportunity. But I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear from those of you on the ground in large measure, because this is our 5th anniversary here at KBLA, our 2nd anniversary on the show. And I'm really, really honored to engage directly and things that we don't know, hear from other people, things that they might share. Dr. Johnny Mack is our very special guest in this hour. He's a social entrepreneur, a scholar practitioner with expertise in subject areas of peace, conflict, and social change and movements. He is one of the advisors to the Reverend Al Sharpton. He's certainly an advisor to me, and certainly an advisor to the late Reverend Jesse Jackson on international affairs issues. And I'm so grateful to have known Johnny Mack for these many years, and grateful that he is a regular contributor to our program right here at KBLA. Johnny, welcome forward to the show.
Jesse, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Johnny, can you share with us how we can support your work?
Our website, Jesse, is theworldhouseproject.org. Again, theworldhouseproject.org. And you can find out about our work at that website, and you can also make a tax-deductible contribution. Thank you for asking.
Johnny, I'm particularly honored and look forward to encouraging our supporters to support your work. I'm so proud also of Barbara Arnwine at the Transformative Justice Coalition for the work that she has done and the timing with which she puts together marches, including but not limited to the march that just took place in Alabama after the Supreme Court decision to remove the Shamari Figures congressional district in that state, and the work that she has been doing in terms of direct engagement through the No Kings efforts as they continue to grow and fight tyranny across our country. But Johnny Mack is a very vital part of the thinking that goes into powering a movement, and I'm grateful for that. Johnny, there have been questions raised about the effectiveness of our marches, and comparisons have been offered to the marches of the 60s, which have become near mythical in terms of their proportion. As you know, the March on Washington in 1963 was a march for jobs and justice. The economy was front and center. Of course, Martin Luther King Jr. delivered the I Have a Dream speech at that march, and somehow we don't refer to it as the Jobs and Justice March. We refer to it as the I Have a Dream March. But when you think about the Freedom Riders, when you think about crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, when you think about the the march from Selma to Montgomery, you think about nonviolent confrontation. There's a confrontation. Today we have a lot of speeches. Everybody got to give a speech. Everybody got to go live. Everybody got to post a picture. I was here. I get all of that. But there was a confrontation. And then we did not have the support of the state police or the Capitol Police or the security leading members of Congress to our marches. Dr. King talked about a group of creative, non-conforming witnesses to our struggle who helped shape the character, the culture, and the narrative of our movement in nonviolent ways. And in those marches, Johnny, they had to be trained. From your perspective, what's the difference between our millions of people that we have marching and the few nonconformists who actually changed the law in the 1960s?
Well, Jesse, while the principles may be eternal, we might call them eternal verities, eternal truths, eternal values, the fundamental principles of nonviolence. In practice, how we apply those principles change. They change with the times. They change under circumstances. One wonders, for example, if the Homeland Security Act that we are confronted with today that creates much of the infrastructure of border security, ICE, brought us the current internal and external policing that we realize today. Had that act been in place in the mid-20th century, one wonders what the success of the nonviolent movement might be. There's a book written by Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stephan in 2012. I think it's called Why Civil Resistance Works. I think it is. And part of that work suggests that from 2000 to 2006, 53% of all nonviolent movements were successful. And Chenoweth argues that don't miss this now, if 3.5%, it's called the 3.5% rule, Jesse. Her research says that if 3.5% of a population joins a protest movement, its likelihood for success is great. That's very important. I think
0.35% of a percentage?
3.5, not 0.35.
Oh, 3.5%.
It requires, at least in her work, which is quite extensive. But her work also suggests that in today's current authoritarian environment, both here in the United States and throughout the globe, there's a significant shift. So, Jesse, in other words, in the same way that social movements have shifted from the mid-20th century to where we are today, so has the infrastructure that has been put in place to either accommodate or frustrate the efforts of nonviolent movements. Now, King understood this. He understood and saw, I believe, these changes as they were emerging, which is why he argued that we must put in the effort of really understanding how nonviolence works, not merely nonviolence resistance, but the entire panoply of what's available to social movements in order to effect nonviolent social change. That's why in my own work, I asked the question, after confrontation, then what? What do we do if after all of the confrontation, all of the protesting, the marching, the civil resistance, and we don't achieve what we sought, what then do we do? Or, Jesse, if we do achieve it, but what replaces what we fought against is worse than what we have, what then do we do? And that's actually where we are today.
Johnny, I'd make the argument that so much of the thesis that we posited is what took place between Brown and the death of Martin Luther King Jr. And of course, the eruption the hearing and notification of his assassination on April 4th, 1968, that what took place in Tiananmen Square with the young man who stood in front of the tank was a manifestation of our movement. It spoke to resistance and the human spirit and its capacity. Just one man standing in front of a tank. And the image of that one man, an act of defiance, was globally, I think it's a Pulitzer Prize winning photo, the consequences of that moment of resistance. Since 1968, Mandela had spent 27 years in jail. That act of defiance that gave birth to the democracy that is South Africa under the leadership of Cyril Ramaphosa, we are responsible for that too. I mean, Mandela emerged from prison saying that he had observed and read about the American civil rights movement, and it changed his attitude and disposition about what was possible. This idea of multicultural living and coming together with even Afrikaners. There's so much to be said about how our movement has influenced others. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come back on KBLA Talk 1580, we will be with Johnny Mack right here on the World House.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
My name is Cynthia Mitchell. I've been an emergency room nurse in Los Angeles County for 25 years. I've been there through every fire season, every outbreak, every earthquake. Every time Los Angeles needed us, the doctors and nurses of Los Angeles County showed up. And right now, I'm seeing another disaster coming. Trump's cuts to Los Angeles County's healthcare system are a public health crisis in the making. Medi-Cal, public hospitals, disaster preparedness are all at risk, but we can stop it. Measure ER fights back against these cuts. For a half a penny, we keep emergency rooms open, care within reach for working families, and doctors and nurses serving the communities we love. When you vote yes on Measure ER, you're not just voting for healthcare, you're voting for LA. Vote yes on Measure ER by June 2nd.
Ad paid for by Yes on ER, Restore Healthcare for Angelinos, sponsored by St. John's Community Health and Health Justice Action Fund. Ad committee top funder, St. John's Community Health.
Going to a World Cup match in LA this summer? Ditch the parking stress and ride Metro. With direct service from across LA County, it's the easy way to get there for just $1.75 each way.
Let's be real. For too long, too many of our students have sat in overcrowded classrooms in underfunded public schools.
But as head of the San Diego School Board, Richard Barrera changed that.
Under Barrera's leadership, student literacy rose from the state average all the way to #1 among major urban school districts. Barrera led the way for smaller classrooms and for teachers to be paid what they're worth.
Barrera funded more counselors and mental health services, and community schools that teach real-world skills for future jobs.
A community organizer who became an education leader to fight for our kids. The only candidate for state superintendent of public instruction.
Backed by the 310,000 classroom educators of the California Teachers Association. Vote Democrat Richard Barrera for state superintendent.
Ad paid for by California Teachers Association Independent Expenditure Committee, not authorized by a candidate or committee controlled by a candidate.
From the people who brought you It's the Dog Park comes.
It's a hot spot on your dog's leg. But the internet says you can treat it at home. You're not sure though, because now it's oozing.
Protect your dog from injury and illness with Progressive Pet Insurance.
Ooh, he's licking it. Super gross, dude.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Coverage subject to policy terms.
I'm Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group. Did you buy a timeshare because they told you it was a great investment? That's a lie. Most timeshares can be bought online for $1. To find out what your timeshare is worth and to cancel it, call us today and we'll send you our timeshare exit kit free with all your options for cancellation.
Call Wesley for your free exit info guide. 800-798-3399. That's 800-798-3399.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. King Volley, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We are in the World House with Dr. Johnny Mack. He is a mentor exemplar. And I'm so grateful that weekly he gives us an hour of his time. And I can't begin to tell you when I first decided to undertake a career in radio how difficult it was to try and convince Johnny to come do this with me for an hour every week. And he has been dedicated and consistent. I'm so very grateful for the tutelage he provides me and all of our listeners through these very difficult times. Johnny, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
You're too kind, Jesse. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
I'm only telling the truth. Hey, Johnny, check this out. Dr. Mack, I'm wondering if it's fair to assume that while we are watching these pillars of the civil rights movement be dismantled by the court and by this president, from diversity, equity, and inclusion to affirmative action, to his attack on the PWIs, suggesting that we were not qualified when we were allowed to go to medical school and to law schools at their schools. I'm struggling with this idea that Dr. King's work, from Rosa Parks to his untimely assassination, murder, and death, was about removing the last vestiges of Jim Crow at the beginning of Second Reconstruction. And I define the beginning of Second Reconstruction to be 1954 forward. We had to have a constitutional framework to do what we did and to witness what we've become. But the vestiges of Jim Crow still lingered, and Dr. King, Malcolm X, and others rose to that occasion. They rose to that moment because the America that we live in, well, let's just say a year ago, was fundamentally different than anything I think they might have imagined or even experienced in their own lives. As Jim Crow comes to an end, there is an even deeper reflection, Johnny, at the end of First Reconstruction. As Second Reconstruction comes to an end, there's an even deeper reflection and comparison about how we lost all of our members of Congress, our rights coming out of First Reconstruction, and the parallels that are being made to that reality today, which has called many of us to suggest that organizations like the NAACP, the Urban League, the fraternities and sororities that were founded at the beginning of Jim Crow, that they too should return to their roots of resistance. After confrontation, then what? A return to the roots of our resistance, and quite frankly, away from the social clubs and some of the foolishness that we've engaged in since we've enjoyed a level of comfort in an ever constant and changing reality. Johnny Mack?
Yeah. So, Jesse, resistance will always be necessary. When you question whether the legacy organizations, I suppose we can use that term, should return to their roots of resistance, the question is, what are those roots, and when did they leave them, and why did they leave them? But the point really is that resistance, whatever it is and however it is done, must be consistent with the circumstances in real time as well as over time. And I think, Jesse, that resistance has to be matched with, as I've said many times on this show and otherwise, with other forms of nonviolent social action. But also, we must remember that King argued that those legacy organizations came together at a time and addressed issues consistent with that time. But he told us that those same organizations would not be the ones to finish the work, my term, not his, but would not be the same ones to meet the challenges of the difficult days ahead. And so if he was right, that's not to suggest that these organizations should not be in the fight, should not be in the struggle. But what else? What other methods, what other types of organizations should we be focused on today in order to address the challenges and the circumstances that we have today? That is a question that King put to us that, Jesse, I'm not sure we've answered yet. And it may well be, and I argue it is, why we're in the predicament we are in today, that we did not do the kind of study and reflection, and we don't have the full understanding of nonviolent social change that King admonished us we should focus on in order to be ready for this time and under these circumstances.
Johnny, we were 3 years. We were 3 years into the right to vote when Dr. King was assassinated. 1965, assassinated 1968. He'd never lived to see 62 blacks in Congress. He never lived to see 800 African-American state legislators at the state level fighting for justice with respect to these lines that the legislation he helped advance, helped create. He never lived to see blacks in the Senate in second Reconstruction. That's a new thing. That just happened. He certainly never lived to see Barack Obama as president of the United States. And so, yes, these are changing times. But Johnny, in a real sense, even in these changing times, there is some ancestral call to the ways in which we've made it over. And in that reflection, Johnny, paying homage to that period, can you offer us a word of hope?
Well, as I've said before, and I will always say, my hope is in the generation, this new generation, and that new generation that continually emerges from one to the next. We, Jesse, you and I, have stood and are standing on the shoulders of those who came before us, who stood on the shoulders that came before them. Now, our shoulders must be broad enough, and we must be determined enough to allow those who follow us to stand on our shoulders and enable them. And it is they in whom I hope.
So grateful, Johnny. Johnny, I was talking with Barbara Arnwine after the Alabama march, and she said of the thousands of people that showed up, she said, Jesse, the largest number demographically were somewhere between the ages of 18 and 25. I think she might have even said 30 or 32. She said she was overwhelmed by the generation of activists who had shown up at that particular march. And obviously, on one side of town, the No Kings marches are taking place. But now with the direct assault on our Voting Rights Act, including the new tools that we have. I've seen some preachers preaching some amazing sermons right through here about the injustices that are taking place. And then I can't help but reflect, even though this wasn't my era, when Joseph Jackson was the president of the National Baptist Convention, and the idea of talking about, justice in the here and now was fraught against those ministers who preached the by and by every Sunday.
Yes.
They weren't willing to make that transition. But increasingly, boy, these preachers from these seminaries up at Princeton Theological Seminary and Chicago Theological Seminary and Crozier and Union Theological Seminary. I mean, these preachers are coming out here and they are speaking real truth to power. And all I've asked in this particular space, that as we march, that we look at the drama associated with the nonviolent confrontation A lot of people out here marching. Not everybody's willing to go to jail or get hit in the head with a club. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Grateful to Johnny Mack. More on KBLA Talk 1580 on Friday. It's Fat Meat right here with Jesse Jackson.